On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks play a terrible, awful, no good game against the Memphis Grizzlies and find a way to win. I need a cigarette. We'll talk about that and more in today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
You are Locked On Mavs.
Great, Rusty.
Your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast.
No one's dying.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Amazing.
Your team every day.
Still can't even help it.
La la la, let it ride. La 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 la. Dum dum da 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 dum dum. And welcome. You're locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager of the Locked On Podcast Network. And no, I don't smoke at all. Your team every day. Thanks for being an everyday or making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. Subscribe to our free Locked On Mavs newsletter. Get Mavs news and NBA analysis straight to your inbox every day for free. Check the QR code on the screen or the link in the description. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. And joining me as always, the post-game prodigy playing hurt today from the great Slightly Biased YouTube channel. What you got for me, Slightly Biased?
Not to toot my own horn or anything or come across anyway. I don't get the appreciation or respect that I deserve around these parts. Blue game for me right now. I went on the balcony. I wore a suit to a game. They're 9-1 since I coached the team from the 300.
That's right. That's right.
You know, sometimes they pay the respects later, and you just have to wait.
That's right. The respect will come. The respect will come eventually. It comes for us all. Oh my gosh, the Dallas Mavericks just played a wild game. We got to talk about Spencer Dinwiddie and the clutch. We'll talk about how the Mavs defended the Grizzlies. We'll talk about the terrible, awful quarter from hell in the third quarter that was brutal for the Mavericks. We'll talk about all that and get into Kyrie's play as well. But slightly, let's start with this. That fourth quarter, the Mavs had just played, like I said, the quarter from hell. That third quarter, they were so bad in that quarter. They got outscored 38-22. The Mavs had 10 turnovers. They averaged like 12-13. They had 10 turnovers in that one quarter. They missed 7 threes in that quarter. The Grizzlies hit 5. And the calls were all over the place, and the Mavs didn't really respond very well to it. And then they respond in that fourth quarter by just... it felt like sheer will that the Mavs, and they missed a bunch of shots at the rim in that fourth quarter too. To me, this game was the Mavs playing an awful game. Like Tim Cato said, it may have been the worst game he's ever watched. I was sitting next to him, and it was a brutal game where just a lot of stuff was going wrong. The refs were calling ridiculous things all over the place. And this team found a way to win. And we always say this. That's what great teams do. That's what really good teams do. You and I sat here not that long ago and we're like, there's a good team hidden inside this Mavericks team right now. And in a game like this against the Grizzlies, who are a good opponent in the NBA Cup, because it means more in the NBA Cup, the Mavs find a way to win and now seemingly advance to the NBA Cup.
We're not entirely sure yet if the Portland Trailblazers win by 54 points. Someone told me the Mavericks are out. So we're on pins and needles waiting.
We'll keep you updated as we record this, not live.
Yeah, we're watching closely there. But that was a crazy game, man. Sometimes, in an 82 game, it's the most elementary analysis that there is. It's like sometimes they just didn't want it tonight. They played a bad basketball game. Like, that really, over a course of an 82-game season, sometimes that is just how it goes. And it feels like from the second and third quarter, it was like the Mavericks were just like, here you go, Grizzlies, win this game by 20 points.
Yes.
Like, we're missing free throws. We're going to turn the ball over 19 times, 18 times in a 2-quarter span. I think the Grizzlies broadcast, because the Mavs broadcast for me was so laggy tonight. I had to watch the Grizzlies broadcast. I thought they did a really good job, by the way. But they were saying 3 minutes left in the third, 2 minutes left in the third. The Mavericks had already turned the ball over more than any other game they had so far this season, and had given up more points off of turnovers than any other game with 2 minutes left in the third. So they just, in a weird way, man, we talked about this second game of the season, or whatever game that was, against the Suns, their first loss, where the flow and pace of the game was so bad because of officiating, and the Mavericks just couldn't find the rhythm. In tonight's game, this game slowing down to that pace in the fourth quarter helped them out so much, and it allowed them to force the Grizzlies to play their game, which is a little bit slower. The Mavericks aren't as slow as they used to be, but this is the fastest team in the NBA, this Memphis Grizzlies team.
Yeah.
And they are, really they have been ever in the John Moran era just because of spacing and stuff like that. And Ja's not like a huge threat from the 3-point line. Is like they're not a great half court offense. And you saw that they had a huge scoring drought in this game. The Grizzlies did. Like it just a really impressive win by the Mavericks.
It really was, and you can try to take it away. The Mavs took a ton of free throws. That's what kept them alive a lot in this game. I mean, maybe if you want to hold that against them and say, "Oh, the refs were making," they took 44 free throws in this game, which is wild. I'm sure our friends over at Locked On Grizzlies, Joe and DeMichael, are talking about the Mavs free throws over on that side. But to me, I think the Mavs had 103 points with 3:48 left and finished with 121. It was that stretch of the game where Luka gets fouled. He hits one free throw, so they actually had 102 with like 3:40 left in the game, and then you get two massive Dinwiddie threes. You get a Luke, or get a Grimes rebound that was absolutely massive at the end of the game. You get a PJ Washington three. I mean, the emergence of Spencer Dinwiddie has been so important for this Mavericks team, especially in a game like this where Kyrie didn't have it. We'll talk about him, but Spencer Dinwiddie hitting those 2 threes. First of all, I fully expected that first 3 to go in. Soon as I saw he was wide open, I was like, he's going to miss all the other threes he takes the whole game, but he will make that one because that is what Spencer Dinwiddie on the Dallas Mavericks does for whatever reason.
Yes, I fully expected. I fully expected that pull-up 3 that he shot that gave the Mavs the lead initially to go in, and then I thought he would break the next one just naturally.
Yeah,
but he did make both. But yeah, I mean, what is this 5 or 6 games in a row now? Where like that Spencer Dinwiddie stretch basically won the Mavs the game.
It's wild. It's wild, but you need players like that. If they talk about it every finals run or every playoff run, you have these random role players that just show up. Tim Hardaway Jr. scoring 17 in Game 2 against the Thunder, right? Like you remember games like that where it just took a random role player. Dinwiddie finished this game 16 points, hit only 3 threes. 2 of them were the most clutch, important threes of the whole game in this one. But they needed that extra offense. They needed that extra movement, and Kid decided to close with Dinwiddie instead of Grimes or Klay Thompson. Klay had just come back from the plantar fasciitis. He had been out for a little while, so he decided to do that. Or he could have gone maxi and gone bigger, but he decided to go with Dinwiddie and go with the extra playmaking and extra ball movement, and it ended up paying off in a really big way for Kid.
Kill a kid, man. Kill a kid. Coach of the year?
I mean, since we called for his head, he's been amazing. He's been amazing.
We didn't call for his head this year.
Last year.
But yeah, that is true. Since last year, he's on a historic run. Do we have some sort of power that
That's
works?
right.
I'm just telling you.
We should say more bad things. Luka will never win an MVP. We should just start saying things. Just start saying anything.
Kyrie is in a forever shooting slump that will never go away again.
There's no way Kyrie will shoot 50% from 3. Just
Kyrie
keep
will
saying
not be an
things.
all-star starter this year.
Man, to just find a way to win that game, and I know there was a ton of free throws, and it came down to that in a way. Mavs had 25 turnovers in this game. They tried to give this game away, and they found a way to win in the end.
Yeah, and I mean, we do have to talk if we're just going to break down this game. The Grizzlies just had if the Mavericks did what the Grizzlies did tonight, this would be a completely. But I told Nick earlier before just behind the scenes. I'm feeling a little under the weather. I told Nick before, hey, I don't know if I'm gonna do Locked On tonight. I'm probably just gonna want to sleep after the game. After that crazy thing I had to come out here. If that were the Mavericks, I would have said, yeah. Guess what? I'm not coming on tonight.
He would have bailed. He would have bailed. Oh my gosh, yeah, he would have completely bailed on me at that one. Completely understand that. Oh my gosh.
But no, like Marcus Smart had 2 plays down the stretch of this game that were mind-bogglingly stupid, where he tries to save an air ball 3. I was just going to assume that he thought it was tipped, right?
2 minutes, 33 seconds left. The Mavericks are down by 5. Luka misses a 3. Marcus Smart grabs the ball out of bounds, but then just lands and has the ball out of bounds. Just a crazy, weird play.
Yeah, it had really no chance of saving. I'm just going to assume and give him the benefit of the doubt that he thought it was tipped. But you never know, because this Grizzlies team, you saw it all game up until the final 6 or so minutes. The pace that they play at is absolutely barnacles. But so he was maybe just trying for them to push off of a miss. I don't know. But that, and then that frustration foul, 90 feet away from the basket when the Mavs were in the bonus. Like, you can look at the free throws the Mavs shot, but the Grizzlies, I thought, were fouling a good amount. I mean,
yeah, Grizzlies finished with 29 fouls. And, yeah, that was 2 minutes left. The Mavs missed a 3. Luka got the rebound, and then Smart fouls him. And then the Mavs are only down by 1 at that point. It was a really huge whole sequence there that Marcus Smart made a couple of big, terrible decisions. And Then the 2 Dinwiddie threes. That sandwiched by a lively block on Jaren Jackson Jr. That was massive right at the rim.
Lively was awesome down the stretch of this game. Awesome.
Absolutely awesome. Coming up, let's walk through this game. Let's go through from top to bottom and go through how the Mavs got this win. We'll talk about the good things, talk about some of the bad things, and get into all that and more coming up.
You don't believe you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNBA to get $20 off your first purchase of a ticket to a comedy show, a concert show, a sports show, a theater show, any kind of show that you want to go to. So many different things on Game Time. I've used it for a bunch of different things. I love the all-in pricing because when I go on a ticketing app, I want to know what I'm going to pay right up front. I don't want to have to get surprised by the end of this and all of a sudden the $80 ticket I thought I was going to buy is $140 because of all these surprise fees. You turn on that all-in pricing, it'll tell you exactly what you're going to pay. Gotta love that with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying Game Time with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. We're also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks daily fantasy made easy. All you have to do is go to Prize Picks. You can do it in Texas, something that's awesome. If you're not able to play some other games, you can definitely play Prize Picks. Pick 2 to 6 players and pick more or less than their stat projections. They give you a bunch of different stats. Let's say Luka, 28.5 points. If you took more on that one, you would have won tonight. If you would have took Ja Morant and let's say it was 32, let's say it was 31.5 points. You took less, you would have won that one. I had to bump that one up to make it true. You can do that, and then that's a lineup that you can play. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Download the app today. Use that code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Put $5 down on a lineup, and you don't even have to win. You get $50 instantly after you play that lineup. So use that code LOCKEDONNBA to get that. Prize Picks, run your game.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. We appreciate each and every one of you for checking out the show. Check out our newsletter. We have a free newsletter. Check the QR code on the screen or the link in the description to subscribe to our newsletter. We're still the #1 newsletter in all of Locked On. We appreciate that. Also, become an insider. Text the number that's on the screen or the link in the description, and you can get text sent straight to your phone. I send a bunch of notes and things like that. Help us to support the show by subscribing to that. All right, Slightly, let's walk through this game because it was wild. It was a wild game. They played pretty even the first couple of quarters, but Luka came out slinging 12 points in that first quarter, and you knew this was one of those games where Luka was going to come out and he was going to get his offense first, and then the rest, it was all going to fall into place, the rest of it. And some of those games usually really work well for the Mavs.
Yeah, and this is where a game like this where you are going up against a team that plays so fast. Having a guy who is just a master at controlling the tempo of games is so incredibly important for you. And Luka was awesome right out of the gates in this. And also, I mean, if this was the first time you've watched the Grizzlies at all this season, you really wouldn't know going into this game. But Jalen Wells has been incredible for the Grizzlies so far.
Started.
Just won. Yes, he's been starting for them. Just won Western Conference Rookie of the Month. Been a really good two-way player for them. Knocks down threes. You saw tonight. I mean, they put him on Luka immediately, and Luka does what we've seen him do against rookies time and time again, where he goes out, he's bullying them, he's hunting them, and these rookies, these young guys, it's hard to blame them because they're used to guarding different levels of players, and they get the lancy, they get their hands in the cookie jar, they reach where they probably shouldn't reach, and Luka's just such a master at knowing where the help's going to come from, knowing okay, he's gonna dig in right here, and I'm gonna do my low dribble pickup and draw a foul. So he was amazing right out of the gates. Luka was in this one. He
always plays the Grizzlies well, but he also thrives against smaller guys and against same size bigs. He's 6'8", so if you're a 6'8" big, he's going to beat you because he's going to be just as big and almost as strong as you probably. And Brandon Clark was the one that was tasked with trying to guard him sometimes, or at the rim when Luka got switches, and Luka was just taking it to him because it doesn't matter. And then when he got Ja switched on him, that was nothing to it. He could just take advantage of any of those matchups. There's really nobody on the Grizzlies except maybe Jaren Jackson Jr. that can match up with Luka, that could slow him down in a way, right? That could could limit him from getting to where he wanted in certain spots in this game.
Yeah, and I mean, the Grizzlies broadcast team did a good job pointing this out because it's true. Like in a matchup like this, really the only way you could stop Luka is just hope that the pace, the frantic pace of the game just naturally tires him out and slows him down. And this isn't like a commentary on his weight or anything. I'm just saying it's just naturally a tiring pace to play at, especially when.
How dare you? How dare you?
But let's just jump in front of it before anyone takes it there. But it's just that pace that the Grizzlies play at. It's naturally tiring, especially if that's not the pace you're necessarily accustomed to. So, the fourth quarter, like Luka, obviously most of his points came in the first half, 24 points in the first half. But fourth quarter, 8 points on 2 of 6 from the field, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, was a plus 18 in that quarter. Just masterful stuff.
Really, really, really great. We had a couple of things that stood out to me in that first quarter was Lively was playing way off of Brandon Clark too. They had Lively guarding Clark, and then they had PJ guarding Jaren Jackson Jr. Usually that's flipped because Jaren Jackson's their center, Brandon Clark's technically their forward, and so you'd think that would be different. But they wanted Lively to be able to play off of the guy that doesn't shoot, which is Brandon Clark, and to kind of hang out in the paint. But that allowed the Grizzlies to get a bunch of open threes. They took 14 threes in that first quarter because I think that they got a bunch of threes because Lively couldn't run up to switch because he was playing so far back from Brandon Clark. I just thought that was an interesting wrinkle in the first quarter.
Yeah, and even then, Brandon Clark's a guy. You see this like when you watch the Thunder and Hartenstein, where if you are going, even if you're going to drop off of those screens, Brandon Clark's floater is one of the more lethal floaters a big has in the NBA, so he can punish you in that space with that. I thought their defense did much better. I also thought part of it was, we've sort of touched on this. I've tweeted it out before. This was Klay's first game back after missing however many games. The trio of him, Luka, and Kyrie, I just don't think there's just not enough perimeter defense there. Like PJ Washington was the guy early in the game who picked up John Moran, and he did a good job, all things considered. But PJ's used better elsewhere. I feel like you need his size elsewhere.
Right off the jump, which usually tells you who's assigned to which player. Kyrie was guarding Ja he was assigned to him, and you just can't get away with that in games. And so that's why I think eventually they may need to make some kind of a change. But Klay was guarding Bane, so somebody was going to have to, one of Luka and Kyrie was going to have to guard somebody. And just like Jason Kidd said at the beginning of the season, Luka's going to have to guard somebody eventually. Why can't it be Luka? But I just thought that was interesting that they tried to make that change. And then, a pretty good first quarter, all things considered.
No, for sure. I think when that starting group had its most problems was the third quarter, the start of the second half. But there was a lot of turnovers and stuff, and the Grizzlies got a lot of points off turnovers in that quarter. So that wasn't necessarily all because of like the half-court defense or whatever the case may be. But I've talked about these numbers where you look at the Klay stuff. Like Klay with one of Luka, one of Kyrie has been really good so far this season. Like all the on-off numbers, everything says that like a duo with Klay and one of those two is great. In the trio, they're positive in their minutes, but they're a +1 net rating. If you want to be a championship level team, the idea is you dominate when your starters are out on the court. That's just historically how it's been. You've
got to find that best lineup, and you've got to run with it, and you've got to run with it more than you run with all the other lineups. That's just right? The Celtics have theirs. The Nuggets have had theirs in the past. You have that lineup that you run over and over again, and that's why we're so big on starting is because that's usually your best unit, and you use it multiple times. You use it at the beginning of the first quarter, end of the second quarter, beginning of the third quarter, end of the fourth quarter. You use it more times than you would use another lineup throughout a game. So that's why we were big on Lively starting. We were big on I'm big on eventually. I think they'll have to make a move for either Grimes or Najee for Klay eventually, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in future episodes. Klay did have a moment in the second quarter I want to talk about. He had an offensive foul called on him against Smart, and Smart totally slid underneath him, and the Mavs didn't challenge it and didn't go for a challenge at all. And Klay had scored off of that, so that could have been points right there. I thought that was a – and then right after that, Klay had that awful turnover where he was inbounding the ball and threw it right over Luka's head, and Ja got it and ran to the other end, and I just thought that sequence was notable.
Yeah, I think that it looked that inbound looked really bad. I think that was just an unfortunate
misunderstanding.
That wasn't like a horrible Klay play. Yeah, I agree with you. I thought for sure that would have been an interesting challenge for the Mavericks because by the time Klay went up in the air, Marcus Smart was not set and he was in the restricted area. So
yes,
I thought they would have won that. That would have been a 3-point play, but it
the Mavs just aren't allowed to win challenges though, except for last game.
Challenge? Did they challenge a play in this
game? No,
game?
they didn't. No, the Grizzlies did. The Grizzlies did at the end. The Mavs didn't challenge one. The refs reviewed multiple things, which made it feel like there was multiple challenges, but they didn't get that.
This game, the flow of this game, the rhythm of this game was awesome.
Oh, just completely. And it's almost why it was so low scoring in the first half because there wasn't a lot of like stoppages necessarily. And then in the second half, they're so high scoring for both teams in third quarter for the Grizzlies, fourth quarter for the Mavs, because they kept stopping the game. So possessions would last like 2 seconds, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Oh, that was brutal. Kyrie got his third foul at the end of the second quarter. That was notable because he was in foul trouble in this one. That may have spoken to some of his lack of rhythm in this game, but he got in a little bit of foul trouble, and I thought that was notable in this one. But then in the third quarter, this was where everything just fell apart for the Mavs. Luka got a tech early in the third quarter with like 9:16 left, and it was just for waving off the ref. What do you think it's fair or unfair that you get a foul for literally just doing this, like just waving off the ref?
Yeah, obviously, like I do think refs have a much quicker trigger with Luka when it comes to techs. But the same thing I'll say anytime Luka gets a tech, and it's like it looks like he just said one thing or waved him off. It's not like Luka was silent the entire game up until that
for
point.
sure.
Like,
yeah,
sort of a building point. But you could definitely turn around. Like Desmond Bane was jumping up and down after every single call against him in this game. So you do have to wonder, like, if you're calling the tech there, why are you not calling a tech here on some of these other guys? Like, I definitely get the frustrations, but Luka was wearing them out. he was wearing.
That's what he does. But yeah, it just felt like, oh, that's the thing you're gonna call of all the other things that are happening in this game. You're gonna call tech on Luka doing.
They probably told him one more thing, and I'm teeing you up.
That's Isaac's thing. The refs can't say that.
Oh yeah.
And then right after that, like literally 10 seconds after that, we got the Jaren Jackson Jr. taking a 3-point shot and whacking PJ Washington in the face. It got reviewed, and they just called it a common foul. You have to go so far out of your way to take a 3 and then whack the person next to you in the face. Like that to me was wild. They went through and they actually reviewed it, and then they didn't call that a flagrant foul.
That felt like a textbook flagrant one to me. I mean, just hitting him in the face. If you've ever shot a basketball in your life, there's not a motion I could think of where your offhand flies in the direction of the opposing play to your space. Like, no, it's just it's this. I've been working on this shooting drill.
Wild. Coming up, let's get into the rest of this game. Let's talk about the other things we saw from guys in this game. We talked about Lively and PJ. They had great games. We'll get into the rest of this one and more coming up.
I don't believe you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by our friends over at Chime. There's got to be some kind of Chime thing here in the arena because they're the sponsor of the Dallas Mavericks too. But Chime is there to help you when you want to start saving money, when you want to help yourself pay for your future and start investing in your future. Chime helps with fee-free overdraft up to $200. So if you ever overdraft, you're not paying extra money just for not having money in the first place. Your next deposit is applied to your balance. Get spotted on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. No monthly fees or maintenance fees as well. Don't have to pay to just keep your money somewhere or to get paid somewhere to have a place for your direct deposit to go. And they have over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Gotta love that. Don't want to have to pay to just pull your own money out. Check out how they can help you set up direct deposit in your Chime account after qualifying direct deposit of $200, and Chime will notify you to enroll in SpotMe. They've given over $32 billion in transactions through SpotMe. They spot you the money, and so go check out that. Enjoy the holidays while keeping your financial goals on track with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/LockedOnNBA. That's chime.com/LockedOnNBA. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and direct debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank NA or Stride Bank NA. Member FDIC. SpotMe eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Direct deposit timing depends on submission of payment file. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in SpotMe and are subject to monthly limits. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs or OTC withdrawals. Nailed it.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
All right, Slightly, let's get into the rest of this game. Talk about how the Mavs got a win. Oh, feels great to be on the other end of these clutch games where the Mavs come away with a win that they didn't deserve because it felt like they lost a bunch of games that they should have won. And this one, they win one that they probably shouldn't have. 121-116. We were talking through the end of this game in the third quarter, and the quarter from hell. The third quarter, Mavs got outscored by 16. They had 10 turnovers in the quarter, 7 fouls. They missed 7 threes, and the Grizzlies hit 5 threes. After that quarter, did you think it was done?
After the third quarter, I did. Admittedly, I just didn't like the pace of the game, and I just the Mavs defensively weren't. What I was worried about was that the Mavs were not going to be able to slow the game down enough to stop the Grizzlies from getting out and running as much as they usually do because the Mavericks defense, we know this. The Pacers, these teams give the Mavericks problems. They just do. I was worried about that, but fortunately, I should have put my refs jersey on. Like, fortunately, that was all solved for us.
I kind of feel like the refs called a bunch of things for the Grizzlies in the third quarter and a bunch of things for the Mavs in the fourth quarter. Like, the Mavs felt like they got some makeup calls in that quarter.
Yeah. I mean, they started just calling the second half came around. They're like, all right, we're calling.
We're just calling everything
that happens. Yeah, it was tough to watch.
I was tracking the minutes with Luka and Kyrie together and Luka off and Luka on. In that third quarter, it was Luka and Kyrie together. They were a -12. With Luka on and no Kyrie, they were a -4. And Kyrie on and Luka off, they were a -1. They lost all the minutes. It didn't matter who was on the court. They just were losing every single combination of those minutes.
Well, that's what happens when you turn the ball over 10 times?
10 times in the third quarter.
The team and go, they 0 of 7 from 3. So whenever your offense is about as bad as it can possibly be, no one's going to have a fun time.
There was also a moment in the fourth quarter where I thought it was over, too, where Luka missed 2 shots in a row, then Lively missed a shot, and it just felt like, they've got these opportunities. Yeah, 6 minutes left, about halfway through. They were only down by like 9, but Luka missed 2 short mid-range shots that he normally hits in a row. Lively missed a shot right at the rim, and then he called a timeout, and it was still a 9-point game. And you're just like, the Grizzlies just didn't score during those stretches where the Mavs were missing shots too, and the Mavs defense kind of kept them in the game at the end of this one. You talked about the Mavs slowing them down, and they did in those stretches in the fourth quarter where they were blowing offensive opportunities.
Yeah, it was kind of reminded me of that Rockets game, except the Mavs won, where their defense looked terrible all game, and then they just turn it on to another level in the last 7 minutes. And the game against the Rockets just couldn't make enough plays down the stretch. And in this one, fortunately, the Mavericks, I mean, what was their biggest deficit in this one? Actually, they were saying on the Memphis broadcast, this was the biggest comeback of the season for the Mavs. So I guess they did find themselves in kind of a deep hole, but
they haven't been down that much in these games. Like, they haven't faced many deficits, and all their losses have been they have one loss by 12. Mavs were down by 15 at one point in the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and I mean that's a pretty impressive comeback to come back down 15 in a quarter.
That's not big in the NBA anymore. 15.
It's not, but I mean, if 15 in the fourth, if you think we have to outscore the other team by at least 16 the rest of the way, it's kind of a tall task.
I know, but you can go on a 9-0 run in 3 possessions. All of a sudden, completely change that around, right? We got to talk about PJ Washington. 18 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 blocks, a steal, hit 4 threes. I mean, just the third most important player on the Mavs. Maybe we can talk about Dereck Lively and him, but he's so important for this team. It does so many things. 7 assists has got to be some kind of Mavs high and maybe a close to a career high for him.
There's a silly argument to be made that obviously it's a stupid thing to say, but there's just PJ is such a glue guy for this team that in some ways, if he's out, nothing you want to do works. And obviously, I'm not trying to imply that he's the most important player on the team, but
more than Luka, more than Kyrie.
Yes. Trade Luka, build around Kyrie, or build around PJ Washington. But it's funny, I just looked it up right now. Their on-off numbers when PJ's on the court versus off are pretty much identical. But man, it doesn't. This is why sometimes I try to emphasize this when we talk about stats like these. There's a lot of context that goes into on-off stats and a player's swings and stuff like that. Whether that's because the groups they're playing with, the groups they're not playing with. Some guys get stuck with bench units and stuff like that. We talk about Jokic's on-off stuff. The Nuggets play more 5-man starting lineups than anybody in the league. So that's why his on-off stuff always is crazy. But PJ's on-off, the Mavericks should stay with him on versus off. When you're watching the game, it does not feel like it.
Well, he was a plus 21. I mean,
I'm just saying over the season,
yeah.
It doesn't match the eye test whatsoever.
Wild. Lively in this one, 17 points, 11 boards. He had 3 blocks, 3 assists. Hit 3 free throws, missed 4, but he hit a couple late that were pretty crucial. He's just so important. His rebounds, the way that he can grab rebounds over this. The Grizzlies really missed Zach Edey to grab some of those rebounds, but Lively went up and got some of those, and those were really crucial for the Mavs too.
Yeah, and then when the game slowed down there at the end, it was more of a half-court sort of, the Mavs are playing at their pace. You really saw just the presence that Dereck Lively is helping, blocking shot. Him and PJ together, I mean, that's just that's a big group of guys, and they play strong. They play big above the rim defensively. And D-Live was just huge down that stretch. And then a couple free throws. I mean, his free throw shooting's been a problem in his career. It wasn't great tonight, but he did hit big ones when they needed it the most. So kudos.
You take those. You take the clutch ones, right? Lively, I'd rather you take and make the clutch ones than he hit 2 with.
Yep.
It was a
the Grizzlies challenged that.
Yeah, it was. Let's talk about that play. I'm glad you brought that up. It was a 5-point game. Luka misses a 3. That's where Smart grabs the rebound out of bounds, lands out of bounds. That crazy play we talked about. Then Memphis challenges a play where Lively, Jaren Jackson Jr., and I think Brandon Clark or Aldama were all going for a ball. And it was out of bounds on Lively. But they called it out of bounds on the Grizzlies. They went and reviewed it, and as they're going to review it to see if Hardy's see if the 3 went in, or as they're going to go review it, Memphis challenged it, and they turned it into a foul on Jaren Jackson Jr. because that's the Kyrie play from the Timberwolves series where if it's going out of bounds and they review it and then there was a foul, they call the foul. And so instead, it turned into 2 free throws with the Mavs. The Grizzlies really played themselves with that challenge right there.
Yeah, and I'm interested. I don't know how much it's affected coaches' willingness to challenge plays yet, but that's a wrinkle that will start to matter more because you watch one angle of that replay and it was a clear and obvious foul. It just was, are they going to call this? Like, that is a textbook foul right there. But in this moment, are they going to call it? And, if you, especially in late games, we remember how mad we were at that call against Nurkic. Like, late in games, the rebounding battle under the basket gets so nasty that if you slow down any of them, there's 4 or 5 separate fouls in any given play. So when you challenge it, they really go and look at it. You run the risk.
Yeah, it's like what's more important, the possession, or you could potentially have free throws on the other end, like a foul and free throws on the other end if you're in the bonus. Or if you're
I also wonder if Lively at that point in time, I think was 1 of 5 at the free throw line.
Yeah, right. That's true.
That probably went into the decision making.
But he makes both of them, and then it ends up being a 3-point game at that. And then Luka gets fouled by Smart, that frustration foul we just talked about. Luka hits both of those. It's a 1-point game at that point. And then Bane misses a jumper. And on the other end, Dinwiddie hits the transition 3. Mavs are all of a sudden up by 2 and then took control the rest of this game. I mean, that sequence right there was just absolutely massive, and it kind of got kicked off by that challenge that got overturned for the Mavs. So challenges helping the Mavs. The ones that they don't call, the ones the Mavs do call, have not helped them. The ones that other team has called now has helped the Mavs.
Absolutely. And I mean, before we sound off, I think we do have to discuss Kyrie's game.
I mean, we do. We talked about him. He looked rough. He's allowed to have an off game to me. He had 10 points, 3 of 14 from the field. We talked about the foul trouble he had. Maybe that accounted for some of his lack of rhythm, but it was an off game. We've seen him be great for 2 weeks, and this was the worst we've seen him play all year.
I wonder what it is about the Grizzlies. Because it's not like they really have, Kyrie stoppers.
No, not really. I mean, he's getting guarded by Smart. He's getting guarded by Bane sometimes. He's scrappy. I don't know. But, yeah, there is something about him. They're quick. Yeah. I mean, maybe some of that is the speed. The same thing with the Thunder. They weren't throwing doubles at him the same way the Thunder do, but.
Yeah, I mean, he was just missing some shots that we're used to seeing him hit. But it was just a weird game. Like, he just felt like he wasn't in a flow whatsoever at any point.
For sure. Yeah, he never got in that flow state that we're used to him seeing. He missed all 4 of his threes and all that.
Because I mentioned this in my one-word reaction. Like, Kyrie usually, even when he's having off games, you feel like there's a 3 or 4 minute stretch in a game where he's like, all right, I'm hunting shots now. And I'm going to try and get going. That didn't even really happen tonight.
It was like one shot at a time. It was like, it would be like one shot. Like, oh, he's hunting his shot now. And you're getting ready for him to go into that mode, like you just said. But yeah, that never happened. So, man, great win by the Mavericks. We'll have more time to talk about this. The Cup. We'll talk about the Cup too. Mavs advancing into the Cup, and we'll talk about that and see what that means later on in this week. We have the Wizards game on Thursday, so come back and listen to that post-game show. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs. Check the links in the description or the QR code to find more ways to follow the show. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs. Peace out. Boom!
Blazers down 15. It's looking good.